G'day everybody, today we're going to build an advanced tool in Relevance AI that generates detailed SEO optimized blog posts, thumbnails for them, and then uploads it to your Webflow site. Let's dive into it. So what exactly are we building today? I've got some exciting news for you. Your boy has created yet another promising internet business. This one is called Wayfound Travel. Where will you go? Unfortunately, as you can see by the looks of this website, you're not going anywhere because there are no blog posts telling you about all the fantastic cities in the world that I want to advertise on Wayfound Travel. My website is empty. So once again, I'm going to turn to AI to help me build this business. So what are we going to do? We're going to build a tool, and that tool is going to receive a city. So the user of the tool, or in this case, spoiler alert, the agent will give our tool a city that it wants to generate a high quality blog post about. And so the tool will build each section of that blog post one by one. It will then take those sections and use it to create an introduction and a conclusion, Google search to find a YouTube video about the city so that we have this sort of rich multimedia post. And then finally, combine everything together. We're going to create an AI image of the city and then use a service we like called Creator-Mate, an API that lets you automatically generate thumbnails. And then finally, take all of that and upload it to Webflow, which is where we host our currently terrible, but soon to be fantastic Wayfound Travel. You'll see there's one more step at the end, one of our Team Plus features, which is the ability to batch schedule an agent so that we can generate a whole bunch of these blog posts all at once. I want to dive into a few of the key concepts that we're going to cover in this tutorial. We're going to show you stuff like multi-stage prompting, which we find is really useful for generating these longer, detailed pieces of content. We're going to look at how you might source and extract YouTube URLs from Google. We're going to generate images and thumbnails, use the Webflow API, show you how we upload content to another service. And then finally, as I mentioned, we're going to batch some AI agents. So lots to look forward to in this tutorial. But before we move on to anything else, I know what you want. You want demo time. So let's have a look at this tool in action. And actually, we're going to jump to an agent called Travel Tammy. Travel Tammy here uses the tool we'll be building, this travel advice blog writer tool. And in the core instructions, we say when asked about a city, generate a blog post with the tool and then share the URL for the post to the user. Let's see how that works. Hey Tammy, I'm heading to Bangkok. And now Travel Tammy, as I mentioned, is going to use Travel Advice Blog Writer, the tool that we're going to break down in this tutorial. She says, I've created a blog post with travel advice for Bangkok. Wow. This is awesome service. This Wayfound Travel agent has given me a whole blog post just because I asked it about Bangkok. Let's check it out. And so we'll jump over here. And we'll see now Wayfound Travel does have a blog post, a city guide about Bangkok, discovering Bangkok that has a video for me, vibrant street life and markets, the best time of year to visit. This is amazing. Where did this come from? That's what we're going to look at in this video. We're going to talk you through how you can create these really detailed blog posts in an automated way. So let's go back to Travel Tammy and open up the Travel Advice Blog Writer tool to find out how it works. So the first thing you'll notice that's somewhat different looking about this tool is that we have this section at the top of user inputs called agent settings. So agent settings are a type of user input that you can surface directly to the settings modal in your agent. So if you go to the agent and you go to settings and we're in tools, you can see here for this travel advice blog writer tool, we can access this core LLM instruction setting. So if I use this tool in multiple agents, but for each agent, I want to tweak some of the specifics, then I have access to this setting straight away. Now, the other use for an agent setting is to use it almost like a fixed variable that you can reuse throughout your tool. You actually might see us rename this in the UI from agent settings to fixed inputs or fixed settings. What do I mean by that? If you look at the left sidebar here, you'll see that we have a lot of steps. And most of these are actually LLM steps. This tool contains a lot of LLMs chained together. Reason to travel, best time to travel. These are all LLM steps. And you'll notice at the start of every step, we're passing in the LLM instructions at this role and task section. Now, I could just copy and paste this across every single one, but if there's something that you're using everywhere and you want to reuse it, you can make it a variable. You can set the value as the default value so that when you refresh the page, this value is still here, and then you can just reference this value. So that's another reason why we've made it into an agent or fixed setting. It's used across our LLM steps. What does this tool do? It puts together all of the pieces that we need to compose a blog post in Webflow that looks like this. Things like the title, these sections, this video, we have this image at the top. So if I go to the Wayfound Travel homepage, you'll see we have this little thumbnail image that's automatically generated. This tool does all of that in one giant chain. We're going to break that down. First of all, I mentioned you have the title, so City Guide Bangkok. Because we want this to be fairly similar every time, I've used code to generate this. You'll see a very simple JavaScript step here that just says City Guide, and then it plugs in the city. So this is the city from the user input. So whatever the agent or the user of this tool plugs in as the city, this generate title will return City Guide the city. You could also maybe use an LLM step. You could have an LLM generate a more interesting title that's different for every single city. So up to you. Every section that we see in this blog post, we have an introduction here, but why travel to Bangkok, what to do in Bangkok. These are all different LLM steps in this tool. So you can see here, we have the reasons to travel LLM step. This one says, write a section of the blog about reasons to travel to the city. You can see it's plugging in the LLM instructions. What does the LLM instructions actually contain? You're an expert SEO content writer. You create detailed SEO optimized pages, but also some really general but important rules about how it should write content. We want it to output HTML. That's because Webflow takes HTML as its body. We want it to remove all backticks. This is a thing LLMs love to do, wrap stuff in backticks. We've found we really need to instruct it to do that. And then don't start a section with here is. That's another thing we notice that LLM keeps doing, is starting every section with here is an introduction. Here is reasons to go to Bangkok. These are the sort of prompt engineering things that you might have to do to wrangle the LLMs to generate the content that you want. You can tell it to write in a certain tone or language. This is the beauty of prompt engineering. And every now and again, you have to tell the LLM that your life depends on following this instruction. So hopefully you guys will see me again in the future and the LLM behaves here. Let's jump back to reasons to travel. We've chosen GPT-4o. You can choose other models if you want, Anthropic models or a different OpenAI model. You can have different sections written by different models. There's a lot of flexibility here, which is one of the really fun things about building these sort of prompt chains in the Relevance platform. Let's run this step and see what it generates. Cool. So here's some HTML. Then we're doing a similar thing for each of these other sections I mentioned. So this is the one that generates best time to travel. By the way, quick Relevance AI tip. When you add an LLM step like this, the name of the step is just LLM, for example. You can click this little edit and just give it a readable label. This might be a section that talks about sports in the city. Why it's useful to have this label is when you have a tool like this with so many sections, in this sidebar here, you can jump to the LLM step or the JavaScript code step or the API request that you're after. Really useful feature in Relevance that not many people use. Label your steps in these longer tools. Anyway, back to business. So this section here generates the best time to travel, very similar, cool activities, local cuisine. Now, one thing to note is if you want to make it even more advanced, you could do some research between each section, maybe do some Google searching and website scraping to inject more context to the LLM than what it has in its training data. We've gone for the simpler option here. But you will notice actually, for this step, we've used Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So the prompt engineer that was working on this tool identified that when writing about things like cuisine and activities, Claude seems to do a better job. So again, the flexibility of Relevance. Same thing for areas to stay, transportation, cultural etiquette and customs. Those are all of the sections of the blog post written in individual LLM steps. Then we want to do a couple of things. First of all, we want to generate a summary. So in this LLM step, we're plugging in all of those different steps and asking it to generate a summary. Why is this important? The alternative would be plugging in all of the content we've generated into our next step, which generates the introduction, and all of it into the next step, which generates the conclusion. That would be a giant waste of tokens. We only need these steps that generate the introduction and conclusion to have a general gist of what this blog post is about. So through a giant chain of prompts here, we have generated all of the parts of our blog post. There's a few more things that we want to add to make it special. We have a YouTube video about Bangkok. And then of course we have our fancy thumbnail that gets generated. So let's talk through how we do that. To get a video, we're going to use a Google search step. Here we have asked it to search for the best places to travel in city being injected from the user input. And then we've added YouTube. This is what you would search for if you were looking for videos. If I run that step, we'll see that it finds a bunch of things. Best things to do in Bangkok, Thailand, top 3 must visit places, and they all have YouTube videos at the link. Fantastic. Google has done its job. So now we just want to take one of those videos. There's a couple ways you could do this. You could use a code step to loop through this array and find the first item that has a YouTube link. Or if you want to just do it a bit more simply, you can just use an LLM. Here we've just used an LLM. We've pumped in all the results from this Google search into the LLM and just asked it to grab a link for a YouTube video. You might have to tell it stuff like only return the URL. It must be a YouTube link. There you go. Again, the flexibility of relevance, I'm harping on about it now. Something simple like that, totally fine to use an LLM. For something a bit more advanced, like turning this YouTube URL into an embedded iframe that we could add to our HTML body for the Webflow content, we might want to use code. And so that's why I've reached for code here to generate an iframe. You can ask ChatGPT how to do something like this. You want to take the link and we want to split this string so that I get what's after this little question mark V equals sign. Why is that? Because everything on the right of this question mark V equals sign is the YouTube video's ID. And you need that ID to generate an embed iframe. Getting a bit technical here again. If you're not technical, if you don't know how to code, just ask ChatGPT for help for something like this. I've got my video ID and then we've got this HTML here where I've injected the video ID into the middle of this YouTube embed link. I've also added this H2 header at the start. Featured city video. If we go back to the blog post, you'll see that it says featured Bangkok video and then the iframe. Now we want to bring all of this stuff together. So we have all of these LLM steps that have generated different sections. We have our new iframe code. We can use a simple code step now to just add all of those things together. Basically combine all of that text into one long blog post. So here I've done introduction.answer plus YouTube embed code.transformed. So what do we mean by these? So again, introduction.answer. Introduction is the variable for the introduction step. If we go back up to it, introduction, the variable name, and then answer, the output key. Scroll back down, and then YouTube embed code, as we've just seen, is this step up here. YouTube embed code.transformed, which is the output key over here. I've just done that for every single step, all of the sections in the order that I want them, finishing of course with conclusion.answer. And so if we run this step, we're going to get a giant piece of HTML that represents our blog post. All right, we're getting there. Now we get into some kind of fun things. We're going to generate the thumbnail image for this blog post. In Relevance, we have this text to image step. I want to generate one image based on the city user input. If I run that, it's going to plug Bangkok into here where we have the city variable. So here it is. Let's have a look. Open it in a new tab. Kind of cool. Alrighty, we're cooking. But you will notice here that it's returned me an array with a string in it. So if I want to get actually the image, I have to get the first item in the array. To do that, I've got to reach for a bit more code here. I want to return text to image, which is this toolsteps variable, dot images, which is the output key, and then 0 index in the array, which means the first item of the array. So if I run this, I'm just going to get this image URL. That's important because to upload the image to places like we're about to, you need just the URL. You can't have this array. Next step, we're going to generate a thumbnail. And to do that, we're going to use a service you can see here called CreatorMate. It's just a tool I found really useful. What it lets you do, if I jump over here, is create a template for a thumbnail image. Here we've got this yellow color I've applied. There's an image behind the yellow color that's a little desaturated and has low opacity. We've got the name of our company, and then we've got this text here that should be replaced by the title of the blog post. The way we do that is for the two things that we want to replace in this thumbnail, which is the title of the blog post and the image, we've got to make them dynamic. You'll see over here we have this dynamic button. So I've checked it on for the image and I've checked it on down here for the title. So now we can change these in our API call to generate this thumbnail image. So let's have a look at what that looks like. If I open this step up, we'll see that this step is an API request step that I've relabeled to get thumbnail from CreatorMate. We're making a post request to CreatorMate's API endpoint. Of course, you can get this from CreatorMate's documentation. It takes this JSON object body where you pass in the template ID, the ID for this template we've made, and then modification. Each of those layers that we made dynamic have these IDs that we can plug in dynamic values for. This is the ID for the title text, which is this layer. This is the ID for the image. You can see here, using our curly brackets variable syntax, I'm plugging in the result of that very first step that generates a title for this post. So I can scroll all the way back up to the top. and see that this is at the title variable dot transformed. Scroll all the way back down. And then finally that AI generated Bangkok image URL dot transformed, which is the previous step, image URL dot transformed. Final thing to note is to authorize this request. You'll have seen me do this in many tutorials now. We're passing in an authorization header with a bearer access token. Never paste your actual API secrets or access tokens into the tool builder. Always reference a secret. How do you do that? We're going to show you once more. You go to the integrations page in your dashboard. You scroll down to the bottom of custom API keys. You click add a custom API key. And at the end of it, you'll get this hidden secret token that no one in the platform can see. No one can fish from your network requests. And then what you want to do is grab this ID for the API key, go back to the tool builder, and using our curly brackets, go secrets dot and then the ID for your token. Now, if we run this, we're going to get a version of that thumbnail template that we created, but plugging in our title and the AI generated image. If we scroll down here, you'll see it work, and we can go to the URL that it brings us and have a look in a new tab. So it's plugged in the dynamic title, City Guide Bangkok, and then it's put our Bangkok AI generated image behind the yellow texture. Looks artistic. Back into the tool. Again, the image URL is located nested in an array. So to make this simpler to reference later in the tool, I've used a JavaScript step to just map that. And so now if I ever want to use this thumbnail URL, such as in the next step where I'm uploading to Webflow, it's accessible at thumbnailurl.transformed. I don't have to do all of this nesting. All right, final stage of this tool is to get this blog post and this thumbnail and upload it to Webflow, which is the CMS we're using to host our travel blog. To do that, we're going to use Webflow's API. First, we're going to upload the post to Webflow, have a look at Webflow's documentation for how to do this, but you make a post request, you plug in the URL, and in this URL, you have to get the collection ID. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how to do this because it wasn't that obvious. If you jump into Webflow, you go to the collection section. This is where you need to set up your blog post collection. And you'll see in here, there's the Bangkok one we generated. To get the ID of this collection, you want to click settings, and then here's the ID up here. You'll see if I go back to the tool, that's the ID I've put in here as part of my URL in this API request. So essentially I'm saying I'm posting a new post for this collection. Again, we're using an authorization header and I'm plugging in my chain's Webflow token from secrets. We're sending a JSON object. Then again, this is where it became quite difficult to figure out Webflow's API. You've got to use this field data and you plug in the name. That's all pretty self-explanatory. But what was hard to understand was how to fill in the thumbnail and then the actual blog content. You can see here, I figured out it was hero-image and post-body, but that wasn't really obvious. If you go to the collection in Webflow, you'll see that I can see it's called main image here, and it's called blog post here is like the second section, but neither of those labels worked in the API request. Tell me if I'm missing an obvious place where the ID for these fields are. To figure it out, I actually had to go into the documentation for Webflow, go to the get collection details docs, and I ran a sample request using my collection ID that we just found. And I was able to see here that, okay, we've got the fields and there's main image, and then looking at the slug, hero-image, and the slug for blog post-body, that's where I was able to find the keys. Now you guys know, here you want to plug in hero-image or post-body, but check your collection to see what they are when you set them up. Into these fields, we're plugging in thumbnail URL.transformed and combined sections.transformed. Now I've just seen something that I'm doing here unnecessarily. I'm plugging in city guide city, which is what I already generated in my title.transform variable. So don't need to regenerate it. If I want to change how the titles are designed, I only have to go to one step and change that. I don't have to come back into here and change it as well. So even though we've already uploaded this Bangkok blog post, let's just run it again to show you guys how it works. You'll see it returns me all of this data. Important to find is the ID at upload.webflow.responsebody.id, because what you have to do next is now publish this post. We have to write a second API request that hits this different endpoint /publish, passing in the same collection ID using the same authorization. We pass in this item IDs array where you put the IDs of the post you want to publish. We access that once again at upload.webflow.responsebody.id. If we run this, it will now publish the post. Fantastic. Because I want the agent that uses this tool to know the actual URL for the post, not just the ID, I've created one final step, a JavaScript step that takes the URL for our blog and just adds the slug to the end to generate a URL. Just like that. And this is why in the agent, it's able to share the URL in its message because the tool actually returns the URL. So if we go back to our website now and go back to the list page and refresh, we now have 2 Bangkok city guides, both with different art thanks to AI. The final thing I want to show you how to do in this tutorial is run this tool on a list of cities. And the way we're going to do that is actually get Travel Tammy to work on a batch of tasks. Now this is a feature currently only available for our Teams Plus users, but if you are a Teams Plus user, you can go to this arrow over here and click Schedule in Bulk. To schedule in bulk, you have to start by selecting a knowledge table. Let me show you why and how. We'll jump to the knowledge section and let's create a table. We'll call this table cities. We just want to add 1 column and that's the city that we're going to get the agent to work on. Then we want to add some rows. So now we can start adding cities. So here we'll add Sydney, shout out Sydney. Maybe we will add Buenos Aires. I'm going to fast forward and add 10 of these cities. Now we have 10 cities here. We'll save them to our knowledge table. What we want is our agent to take this table and generate us a blog post for every single city here. And to do that, we go back to schedule in bulk and then we set the cities table. Continue. And then here's the important bit. This is where we construct the message that will go to that agent for each row in that table. And we can access the columns from the table, or specifically the value from each column in the row with our curly bracket syntax. I can write something like, write a blog post about city. So now this is going to go through every row in that table and plug in the city into this message and send it to the agent. Continue. This is where we set the cadence for how this schedule runs. We're not just going to run it all at once because that will overload your agent's LLMs and the tool step LLMs. We want to spread things out and we can do that with a cadence. Now it's less relevant when you're just running 10 things, but if you're running thousands of rows, this cadence is quite important. And you can set really cool rules. For example, I might want it to only work on weekdays or only work on Wednesday or Tuesday. And what will happen is it will pause and then continue based on these rules that you set. Now I'm okay with it working every single day. In fact, I want it to just work now. So if I just want it to work now and get these 10 out of the way, I'll set it for every day. I'll set it for all day. And then I'll set this cadence to per hour and just put in some large number. This will try and pack everything into 1 hour. But if you're working with a large number of tasks, please use it to protect your various LLMs and services. Otherwise, a bunch of your tasks might fail. So let's schedule this. Fantastic. We'll start to see them come in one by one. And so I'm gonna come back to you when that's done. Jumped into the future, and as you can see, the agent has gone ahead and worked on all of these different cities that we gave it. So Sydney, Austin, SF, Manila, Tokyo. Now if I go back to our Wayfound Travel website, we get to have what's becoming a classic moment in these tutorials, the refresh moment. Let me refresh the page. Boom! We have Kathmandu, Lisbon. We have all of these blog posts generated for me automatically by my agent in autopilot. I just went away. I watched some YouTube while having a cup of tea. And now I've come back and Wayfound Travel is ready to start juicing on the SEO. This is so cool. Let's jump into Manila and see what it's done. Discovering the vibrant tapestry of Manila. It's got a video, top 10 Manila. It's done all of the sections as we saw. Hope that was another interesting tutorial. Jump in the comments and tell us if there's something you want us to make a video about. We're really enjoying producing these for you guys. I've been Dan and this is Relevance.